Thank you very much for meeting with me on Zoom, and it's lovely to meet you like this. Uh,
Likewise.
we have the technology now, so we can use it. Um, yeah. So I saw you actually on LinkedIn. You were doing videos, and I saw you were playing, and I was really interested in what you were doing, and also on Instagram I see that you post. You're quite active in posting your work. So was this something that started from lockdown, or have you always been um, so active
Well,
connecting?
no, definitely not. It has to do with lockdown. I mean,
Yeah,
my big son told me I should do Instagram, so I started a couple of years ago, but
yeah.
very half-heartedly.
Mm,
I don't participate at all. I mean,
mm,
I follow, I don't know, 25 people, and even those 25 people, they're on silent. So I don't look at any. I'm not interested in looking photos, and
yeah.
I deleted all social media from my cell phone. So I'm
Mm,
not participating actively in the social media world because I couldn't care less. I'd like to
yeah.
read a book or the newspaper, but I don't draw any interesting information for
Mm,
myself from the social media.
mm,
And though I understand social media is important
mm,
for active musicians, so I did it out of duty. And then with the
mm,
pandemia, my management told me quite quickly, end of March 2020, that this might last long into 2022. And since
mm,
I don't have a job, I mean, I since 30 years or 33 years, I'm a freelance musician,
mm,
and I with 95% of concerts cancelled, my management wanted me to think of an alternative income, and the alternative income was this. They suggested Patreon. I don't
oh
know if you
yeah,
know about that. That
yeah, I
you
know.
post things and people pay a subscription. In my
Mm,
case, between €3 and €100. The €100 people are people who take lessons,
yeah.
practically. So and that I had to build up. And in the guideline of that Patreon,
Mm,
they recommend to do commercial advertisement on the social media to get people
yeah.
interested. So
Mm,
actually, anything I post on Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook, it's solely for that purpose. So when
okay.
I when I do a video for my patrons, often between 30 and 60 minutes length, I do a little 3 minute
Mm,
teaser, I call it, and I post it on those different social media
mm,
platforms. And that's the only time. Then I forward it from my laptop to the iPad, and there
mm,
I still have the social media things. So from there, then I post it, and
yeah.
there I sometimes look if there are any reactions. But that's my only contact with social media these days.
Well, I'm very happy that you're doing that, because find it very interesting what you're doing. And I saw also this post that you did with the cello, the varnished and unvarnished one.
Oh yeah, that was the last thing I posted. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So tell me more about that.
Well,
Was it an
he's an old.
experiment?
Yeah, well, he is one of my patrons of the first hour.
Yeah.
He's an old acquaintance, and not old, but I mean I know him since 6 years. He came to a masterclass I gave in Santa Barbara. He's a professor for philosophy and a violin maker, and a
Mm,
very fine violin maker of that. I played on one of his cellos once, which had just been finished. I played a couple of years ago the Dvorak concerto in concert with it, and the conductor didn't realize it was a different cello than my old Italian. So
mm,
he builds good instruments, and
mm,
he became a patron once I sent the link to all my friends to maybe
mm,
support at the beginning, so that there are some people. I told them just sign on so that there are more than two, and then sign off
yeah.
later. I don't care, but just to make
Mm,
it look not so empty at the very beginning. But he
mm,
stayed, and his very first post was the initiative that he thinks musicians should work closer together with the
mm,
makers of the instruments, as
mm,
they need to know more what we want, what we need, and we should understand a bit more how a cello works. And he suggested we would just meet and do that. Or back then it was April 2020, so have a Zoom meeting. But he's rather shy, and it didn't happen for more than a year. Then I was in London for a week in quarantine, and I had told him beforehand, and he said, "Oh, now actually we could do that." And he had just finished these two twin cellos. I mean, made from the same tree, of same wood, made from the same model, a Stradivari model, but the one he had already varnished, and the other one he had not put the varnish on. And his idea was to experiment with shaving off some layers of wood around the F holes to see how the sound changes. As he thinks that's what the great masters Guarneri and maybe even Stradivari did, that they actually did work closely together with musicians and have it played. And there's, oh no, we could do this more thinner here. And normally a cello is varnished, and then people play around with the bridge or with the sound post, but they hardly ever do anything structure wise. So that was a very interesting experiment, and fortunately he's a very well-spoken person, so it was not a big effort for me to cut it together. I didn't have to delete too many M's and A's. Sometimes he turned away from the camera. So my work in the post-production was that I had to lift up the speaking voice. So when I played, it was quite loud, and then the speaking was too soft because we had one microphone in the middle of the room. So sometimes when he turned to me, his voice became inaudible at times. Yeah. Some things I even had to cut out because I couldn't hear what he was saying.
Oh, okay. But I find that so interesting because I saw the unvarnished one and I thought it's actually also beautiful unvarnished, you know?
Yeah. And actually the sound was quite a bit raw, but it had a quality to it.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. And some of my patrons, he's a jazz musician, and he said that some of the jazz acoustical guitars are unvarnished, that they do that sometimes on purpose because of the different sonority. So yeah, it's actually quite the what is it, the variety of patrons I have collected there on this Patreon page is quite interesting. Some doctors, some astrophysicists, and there are jazz musicians, professional cellists, some professors. Last night I was teaching a professor from Ottawa. He takes lessons with me, and he's my age, so it feels always a bit strange because he's a very accomplished cellist, but he knows that we can always learn from each other, and it's lovely. So and I'm by nature I'm a rather uncommunicative person, so I don't ever use the telephone. My phone never rings, and I never call anybody. And I don't do friends. I don't go out. Now with the pandemia, it forced me to be more in touch. Or with Patreon, I'm more in touch than I've ever been with people. So I've always been very secluded, always complete family person. I like to be home. I like to be with my kids and wife. And now I spend a week with my sister at somewhere at the Baltic Sea. So that's more my character. And this going out now with this Patreon thing is quite a new something I've never thought of doing.
Well, I think it's wonderful that that I understand where you come from, being, not being into the social media and connecting with people. But I've been speaking to quite a lot of artists over the time in lockdown, their time in lockdown, and I find that we learn so much from you. And something like this that you tell, and I think it's wonderful that you connect now with your Patreons because I think people are really intrigued in what you have to say and what your experiences of music. And I think many times that's the connection that's sometimes missing between the artist and the public and the audience. That we go to the concert hall and you are there and of course the music is the communication, but we need sometimes this communication also from an artist, to talk about the music and talk about the art.
That's true, and that's why actually I started participating in social media many years ago. I mean, I joined Facebook, I don't know, at the beginning. I think it was
Mm.
my son. We started doing this. There was this farming thing. Do you remember
Oh,
at the very
yes.
beginning? There was something. So that was Facebook for me at the beginning, and then I
Yeah.
deleted that farming thing because it stole my time, and I
Mm.
have no games neither on my cell phone nor on any of my computer. I don't do games. I love games like we play, you know, the game Settlers. It's
Mm.
a family game, a card game. No,
Oh,
not
okay.
card, but like a table game, whatever you call
Yeah,
them.
yeah. A
So
board game. Yeah. Mm.
board games, sorry.
Yeah.
So these things I love,
Mm.
but electronical things I love
Mm.
as well, but they eat you. I mean, I
Yeah.
made that with experience with my first laptop ever in the late 90s. There was
Mm.
Solitaire. I don't know if
Mm.
you remember these times with Solitaire was the only game,
Yeah.
and I was
Yeah.
playing it for hours and hours, and I had to delete it. To
Mm.
I knew I was becoming addict, and I
Mm.
have now all the compassion in the world with my kids
Mm.
who love to play games on these machines, and I'm very
Mm.
strict with them because I know how dangerous, especially for boys. I think girls are not as tempted and
Yeah.
as prone to be addicted, but
Yeah.
boys, I
Now,
dangerous.
you tell me, I used to have these curfews where I say just an hour and so on. And I was quite strict with that. But now my son is 23. I mean, he's not listening to his mom anymore, you know? It's like,
No,
and now
no.
you just have to hope that they stay sensible but of course, you know, I grew up in the 60s and 70s. You know, we played with things, and I know this Farmville, that was Farmville that was on
Oh yeah.
Facebook. Yeah, so I have the story. I My children played on Farmville, and once the telephone rang, and this was still in the days of the landline, and
Yeah.
nobody answered the phone. And I said, why didn't, because I was busy in the kitchen. I said, why didn't you answer the phone? And said, well, I was busy watering my artichokes. And this was now on farm. And
Very
I
cute.
was so angry that I banned them from the computer. And I said, if you want to water something, there's the garden. If you want to
Yeah,
plant
exactly.
something, there's the garden.
That's very
So now
funny.
that was my experience of Farmville. But no, I totally get that. But as I say,
But then, oh yeah, to answer your question, now with
yeah.
after Farmville, I realized that actually, um, no, God, now I get my dates wrong. I think at some point, I don't know when, it must have been the early 2000, I started writing blog because I thought
Oh,
exactly
yeah.
as you say, that there's this lack of connection between audience and player, and
Mm,
I thought it's and the hype about what we do. There shouldn't be any hype. It's actually nothing magical.
mm,
It's a lot of honest work. Should be honest, and and I thought of taking away a bit of the, not the glamour, but the mystic. It could
yeah.
open also the way of people enjoying music more,
Mm,
and so that was my reason to write blog, but also probably the reason because I was personally unhappy, so it became like a diary.
mm,
And I did that quite for some years. I
mm,
think it's still on my webpage, but
mm,
I have stopped since then. And it felt like I was, yeah, I shared a lot of
mm,
quite personal feelings, and I was completely honest and very blunt, and
mm.
to the effect that even one review was bad because I had written something negative about the concert,
Oh, I
and
see.
the reviewer read the blog and then gave a pretty nasty review, and I
Mm,
had shared my unhappy, no, not unhappy, whatever, it was
yeah.
something slightly critical with the conductor, that
Mm,
I didn't feel it was really on the same page or something, and the reviewer completely went for it,
mm,
which I thought was really nasty. He should have
mm,
said what he felt. He could have quoted me, sure. it's public, but he took it as his own, and he made so it was quite a public blog and had quite and not a huge following, but I was surprised how many people were reading it.
We're interested.
I had hoped for more of a dialogue, which never happened, and which actually then made me stop it, because I I'm I'm not I never found myself very interesting nor very important, which helps me a lot with nerves. I'm not nervous because I don't think I'm important. So if I'm not important, then who cares? I go, I play. Now here in Verbier, they tell me it's very important, but I couldn't care less. I will play, and I'm because it's not it's really what we do is beautiful but not important. What a heart surgeon is doing is not beautiful but really important. I mean, I would start trembling if I would do an open heart surgery, or if I would have to take the last penalty in some penalty shootout in some championship. That is nerve-wracking. But to play music, that's not really. Well, I had bad nerves in my early 20s, and I took care of that by taking myself out of the center of my attention. So I'm not. The world doesn't evolve around me, and this concept was quite helpful. But that concept also then doesn't work for writing a blog if you don't feel people listen or react. So when I felt there was not enough reaction, I thought, like the orator in the desert. So I don't preach. Not with Patreon, I started because people were paying money. So now once there were more than 5-10 people, I felt, oh God, now they expect something from me. And then I started becoming more not really creative, but more open again.
Yeah, well, I understand what you mean also, and for me it was I think critics. So when you talked about the critic now giving this review, I think what and I'm not in the music industry, and I don't know much about music, but what I've gathered after all this time photographing the artists in their windows, I think because the public, I think there's a very small amount of people who are very knowledgeable in music. These are people who studied music or who had some sort of upbringing where they were constantly to do with music. But then there's a very big, a vast amount of people who have a slight idea but they also visit a concert hall. But then you have the critics who are very much into and are sort of knowing really what they are listening. But if these critics then do bad or negative reviews because of specific things that they don't appreciate or whatever, a public that is not knowledgeable could very easily be influenced, without having their own idea of what they want to hear. And I think this is why I think it's so important for artists to talk about the music and talk about what they are doing and what they are creating, because I think this will inform the people who are the audience who just love the music, that will educate them more so that they can form their own idea and their own idea of what they like,
Sure, and they can learn what to listen for. So, for example, lot of the things I try to do is to, well, not only audience but also for cellists, to widen the horizon of how to interpret things. Because my complaint is that often people recycle the same interpretation over and over again. There's one good, like my favorite example is Elgar Concerto with Jacqueline Dupre. It's a wonderful performance, and they recycled over and over and over again. So whenever somebody plays Elgar, I could, with a accuracy of probably 95%, tell you what the person will do wrong in the next bar. Wrong meaning diverting from the text, which is fine. I mean, we don't have to play all the time exactly what's written, but if that not playing what's written becomes the same with everybody, so everybody does the same wrong things, then it becomes wrong. It becomes a wrong habit. So if something they do something because they feel it and want to express it like that, that's a different story. But most of them are just used to one way of listening to something. And that is not only in the cello world, that's in with any music. And there I have to contradict you. The reviewers have no idea. Very few reviewers have studied scores.
Mm.
Most reviewers, as wonderful as they might be, have their knowledge from listening to recordings. So that the musical knowledge for most people is listening to recordings. And with that knowledge, they go and review. And actually, that is not enough knowledge. If you
Mm.
really want to have knowledge, and if you and there I agree with you, trashing a performance is ridiculous. If you
Yeah.
well, one person who doesn't like classical music once told me, what's it for, a music review anyway? And I
Mm.
thought, yes, good point. The concert
Yeah.
is over. Why write about it? I mean, theater review, sure, it keeps on being performed,
Yeah.
the theater thing, or
Mm.
opera. So that's good to say, oh, I really like that production there. You should go listen because of that and that and that. And I didn't like that,
Mm.
but this is wonderful, and the staging and whatever.
Mm.
Or a modern piece, yes, go and write about that. But if any orchestra plays Beethoven 5 and something else, then why write about it? So
Mm.
the only reason to write about it would be to educate the audience and tell them a
Yeah.
little bit what they heard and what
Mm.
choices the conductors did or didn't do. But for
Mm.
that, they don't have the knowledge. So a
Yeah.
reviewer is
Mm.
lousily paid. I mean, they hardly make a living, 95% of them. There's
Mm.
still a few which have a fixed job at the papers, so they get a
Mm.
good fee, and often they're quite okay. Not the
Mm.
most knowledgeable either, but I mean, because it's no fun to write reviews. So that's
Mm.
kind of a job nobody really fights for. They all wanted to be something else. Nobody starts the studies and saying, I want to become a reviewer.
Mm.
They start studying because they love music and they want to know more about it.
Yeah.
But then it's not enough, and they start reviewing things. And I have met wonderful reviewers with a great intimate knowledge of some pieces, but
Mm.
most of them it's through listening, and that is not really, that doesn't entitle them with an uh, educated opinion.
Mm. Yeah.
As I'm not entitled for an educated opinion for for pieces I don't know. I,
Mm.
I could not really criticize. I can say, well, I like that performance or I didn't like it, but there's so much bullshit going on in our
Mm.
world of people talking about something they really don't know enough, and
Mm.
me included. Then I don't talk about it. If I don't
Yeah.
know enough about a certain thing or subject in music, I don't talk about it. Now
Mm.
today I was teaching, I felt something in this one piece the person was playing, but I couldn't describe it with words. I had then to show him what I meant, but it's hard
Mm.
I mean, Arnoncourt wrote in his wonderful book, Nicolas Arnoncourt, the music als Klangsprache, Klangrede or something. He said
Mm.
that music is starts there where language stops. So
Oh yeah. I read.
to to explain music with words is really hard. Some people can do it. I don't know if you know the late Austrian cellist Heinrich Schiff. He was incredible with words. He could really inspire just with the German language. I mean, in English, I've never heard him talk, but he had a phenomenal command of the language and he used beautiful metaphors. But very few people can do it. And me, as a veteran musician now, I have heard so many people talk, and there's a German word called Fremdschämen.
Yeah.
I feel ashamed for them. So
Oh, okay. Yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
good word. Fremd is strange.
Yeah.
Stranger.
Yeah.
Fremder is stranger. So I'm feeling ashamed in their place because
Mm.
they talk crap, and
Mm.
80% of musicians
Mm.
talk yeah, they use empty, it becomes almost like after a game of sports where they use empty phrases to describe a certain thing, because
Mm.
it is so hard. It
Mm.
is often, it leaves me speechless to bring something to a point. I have it
Mm.
in my head, but to make sense of it, it's very difficult. So you're right, one should communicate, but I'm also
difficult.
very self-critical. I'm observing myself all the time from above.
Yeah,
So if bullshit comes out, I immediately realize it and I can't take it.
yeah, yeah. Well, at least you're honest.
Well, yeah, that helps with honesty. Yes,
Yeah.
I'm a crappy liar.
No, but I found it as the musicians I photographed when they started speaking. It was because as I say, I didn't know the music world, still not, but the artists that I met in this environment where they started then speaking about something or just speaking about what they miss from the stage or why they want to be on the stage, and as I asked questions as a very uninformed person, I started seeing just a glimpse in this world, and it just fascinated me, you know, just little things that even how motivated you are and how you know how you just carry on and doing things, and the way you think about things, and I almost think that that is also part of it, you know, to understand that from a musician's point of view, to understand what is this thing where you start at a very young age and you still do music and still learning and still um, creating all this time.
Well, we're not really creating. That's why I'm also sometimes I'm fighting against the word artist. I don't think we are artists. We are musicians.
Yeah.
Bad, good musicians. We're musicians. Artist is somebody who creates something with his hands, who comes up with something new. A
Mm,
composer is more an artist, or a
mm,
sculptor or painter. Even improvisers, in my eyes, they're more artists than us.
mm,
We are recreating. Sometimes we help the original creation to become something even better than it is. So that's
mm,
quite an achievement. Most of the times we don't. And
mm.
the big celebration we do on stage, I don't like that.
Oh,
When
okay.
people this also, I heard interviews from people in the last year when why they missed being on stage, and
Mm,
sometimes I felt it was the wrong reasons. It was this, they live for the applause. It's
mm,
less about playing music, it's more about feeling important. And
mm,
some people then started jumping into social media, and because they couldn't deal with the fact, with the truth that they're not
mm,
important. We are not important. we,
mm,
we do something very beautiful and
mm,
meaningful, but we are all replaceable. And I mean, sometimes after a concert, people come and they say, "Oh, yeah, I liked it. I just teach the cello, but I really like." So I said, no, don't say you just teach the cello. By being a teacher, especially for young people, actually this work is much more important than what I do. I
mm,
yeah, I play the cello. If anybody a little bit better or a little bit worse than me plays the cello, the people wouldn't recognize.
mm,
They, Bach, Dvorak, whatever, Haydn, they speak anyway. So
mm,
without me, the world would not be a lesser place. Without a
mm,
good teacher who has touched the souls of these little ones, I mean, there are a lot of lousy teachers, but my son had a wonderful horn teacher, French horn teacher,
mm,
from whatever 13 to 17, and she led him through a difficult period in his life.
mm,
His parents were divorcing, and
mm,
puberty and school, and she was there, and
mm,
she called me sometimes, and she gave me insight into him which I didn't have. So these people are much more important. I have much more respect for somebody who's doing a good job, not a good job,
yeah,
who
I understand what you mean.
carries those kids, and inspires and influences them.
Mm,
So I I love what I'm doing, but I
mm,
know I'm incredibly fortunate and grateful to have such an easy life. And to play
mm,
music and get paid for it. And
mm,
then some people say, "Oh yeah, but the soccer players earn more." Yeah, but that's not an easy life. They're being scrutinized.
mm,
They're being whistled at. I mean, like, oh, the reviewer gave me a bad review. Yeah, oh, poor you. Sports people get heckled and booed and cursed, and then some black players get racism into their faces. I mean, this is
Mm,
brutal.
mm,
And we people love us, and oh, you're a musician, how wonderful. So, yeah, it's very lucky, very lucky. I, no, I wouldn't want to change with anybody,
yeah.
and I don't know a single person I would want to exchange my life right now,
Mm, mm,
because it's just so, yeah, it's so easy and fulfilling to do that. And I
mm,
didn't miss
mm,
concertizing whatsoever. I was just
mm.
happy not having to travel. I never complain about traveling. I can
Yeah.
travel. I don't tire, but I prefer being home. I love this
Okay.
whole
Mm,
COVID
mm.
thing. When it got when they started for another concert, I thought, really, do I have to go? Okay, I guess. Yeah. No, I didn't miss. I always dreamt of doing a sabbatical, and I never could, because I was the sole. Uh, what is it? I was the only one earning money, so I
Yeah,
had to.
yeah,
But now my wife has a job since 4 years, so
yeah.
I and most people like, oh, we miss so much playing. Yeah, yeah. So often it's just, obviously one needs the money. That
Yeah.
is clearly, I mean, without money, and a lot of people needed the recognition. But
Oh,
if you
yeah.
miss the music, then go and play. Nobody stops you playing.
Yeah, yeah.
Anybody could have continued playing. So
Mm.
don't, I miss the stage. No, then one misses the bravo, you're so wonderful. So buy yourself a tape and put it in, because you cannot. I mean, people say bravo, you're so wonderful, because we play beautiful music, not because we
Yeah.
are so wonderful.
Mm.
And if we play difficult music, they don't say bravo, you're so wonderful.
Mm.
Which is the reason people love to play always the same pieces, because then they get the bravo, you're so wonderful thing.
Oh, okay. Oh, you are so honest and direct. Yeah.
Well, but that's pretty much probably no. I don't. I know I don't know the truth, but I think there is a lot of truth in what I just said. Unfortunately,
But you're doing now master classes at the moment?
it's a special thing. So to get free lessons from three different guys. It's
Oh,
me,
okay. Yeah.
Stephen Isserlis, famous English cellist, and
Yeah.
one of my last teacher, Franz Helmerson, who's
Oh, okay.
wonderful and in his late 70s, I guess. So
Yeah.
us three, I think they're eight cellists, and they take lessons with the three of us, which I
Oh, okay.
find highly confusing, because each of us will say something completely different.
Oh,
I,
I see.
I wouldn't I wouldn't have been interested in that as a young man.
Hmm. Oh, okay.
I'm glad I didn't go, because to take it serious and then the next guy tells you the opposite, and like, oh,
Yeah.
it would have been too confusing for me. But I
Yeah.
guess, and this is what I told the kids. I mean, those young people, I don't know, the youngest 16, the oldest maybe, I don't know, today 21. I didn't ask
Yeah.
for the age. The first
Oh,
kid said his age by himself, so that's why I know he's 16.
oh, okay.
So I told them I'm impressed. It might be that the brain of the kids nowadays can take on more
Oh,
different
I see.
information
Yeah.
with
Mm.
in the time we live.
Mm.
I was more, I could read one book. Now I can read three books at the same time. When I was
Mm.
young,
Mm.
it was somehow more, we probably we were a bit
Mm.
more this, maybe a bit
Yeah.
more focused,
Yeah.
but it's a different brain. I wouldn't judge it. I don't think
Mm.
what
Mm.
we had was better. I think it's definitely more difficult to grow up these
Mm.
days, because
Oh,
there
yeah.
is a lot of opportunities, but
Mm.
to keep the focus is much harder.
Mm.
And I told my son, if I was a boy now, I probably wouldn't become a cellist.
Mm.
Too much diversion, too much
Mm.
distraction to
Mm.
do other things.
Yeah, and many choices. They have so many choices nowadays that it's difficult. Yeah, my upbringing was very basic. I grew up in South Africa in a very small town, and yeah, it was not many choices, so it was easy. But yeah, I don't regret that. I was talking
No,
to
no.
somebody the other day and said it was actually a good time to grow up. I think, you know.
No, definitely. No, it's times change and they're not getting worse or better. And we are always dealing with some crises. So I hope this climate crisis will manage as well. It always, probably always in the moment, it felt always like unmanageable.
Yeah.
And like people growing up in the 40, my father was born 43. So imagine how that must have felt in destroyed and f- full of guilt Germany. You have, they started this war, they killed 50 million and gassed 6 million. And I mean, with this bleakness to still find some hope to work for, I think, yeah, I'm not really hopeless for our future, even though it looks so strange with all this bad news coming, pandemia, climate, Putin, China, all these
Yeah.
Africa's, you get all this negativity. And so music is definitely a good point to escape to, I find.
Mm. Tell me on a lighter note, what do you do before a performance? Do you have a little habit or a ritual?
Not really, not anymore. I used to have, I think I went jogging and took a bath and rested, or I forgot the, no, rested, jogging, bath, and
Yeah.
then play the concert, something like that. And I had to stop that because sometimes there was no bath. And now there's, there's no, I gave that up in the early 20s, I think. That was still when I
Okay.
was a teenager. That was the preparation for when I played. I didn't have concerts before the age of 20. So the
Mm.
concerts I played were, how you call them, class concerts at my
Oh,
teachers,
okay.
like when the
Mm,
class would be playing. So the
mm,
preparation, and I kept that for a little bit, but then once I started really traveling and playing, I
mm.
had to learn to not have anything. I
Oh, okay.
like to, if possible, to sleep
Mm,
at, up to half hour before the concert, like a
mm. Oh, really?
so-called key nap. I can sleep for, like, now I don't even, I used to use a key and once hold it in my hand, and once I would fall asleep, the hand opens, key falls down, you wake up. That's, I read somewhere that this is the most refreshing sleep. And I
Oh.
don't need that anymore. I can just put myself down
Mm,
and really relax.
mm.
And when I feel the first dreams are coming, then after a little while, I'm up and very refreshed. And
Okay.
feels like 25 minutes, it's sometimes only 3 minutes or 4 minutes.
Mm, mm,
So this I like to have before going on stage. And I
mm.
can do that on any floor. I have done that on floors. I mean, on the
Really?
floor of the artist room. That gives me enough freshness to then do
Mm.
the concert.
Oh,
And
okay.
a shower is nice, but not
Mm,
needed.
mm, mm. And
So
then
and
afterwards?
I always perform with earplugs. So when I put the earplugs in, then I'm very much with myself and very much in my own world, and that is enough to actually,
Oh, I see. Okay.
yeah, that's maybe the only ceremony I could not live without. I mean, I have
Mm.
not performed without earplugs in 7 years or so.
Oh, I see.
And today, even in the masterclass, I put them in because I couldn't stand playing with this raw sound right at my ear. I
Mm.
like it with a little bit more distance. And
Oh,
after the
I see.
concert, also, I have no, it's nice to eat something, or
Mm,
I don't like to go to bed right afterwards. That's a bit
mm,
depressing. And if there's
mm.
nobody to have a drink with, then I go by myself and read a book or something.
Oh, okay. Yeah. It sounds as if you're very content and you are very relaxed about what you do. It's very refreshing to talk to
Yeah,
you.
because also, well, thank you very much. Nice to talk to you. But I must say, I can talk like that because I have played for 30 years. So
Mm,
if people with 25 or 30 or 35 getting all shaky and nervous in a time like that, I
mm,
completely understand.
mm,
It's, they're at a different stage in their life as a musician, and they need to, then they maybe need performing much more, and maybe I'm being brutal to say it's not only for the clapping, it's also to grow as a musician. You learn by doing. You can practice as much as you want, but when you play concerts, you learn a lot by doing that. So by not playing concerts, when I then started playing again, it felt like no time had passed. I think for 5 months I didn't play a concert, and then I played and was like, no. But I'm sure for people who have not had 30 years of playing without a break, for them it feels much more monumental, this, and much more scary. But I've heard some people in my age talk like that, and there I think, you're just missing the recognition. So that was actually more directed to the old people who they shouldn't really, they shouldn't try. Also, financially, if you play for 30 years, you have to save something, because anything can happen. I didn't think a pandemic would happen, but I was prepared that I would break my hand or I fall ill or something. So we have to have something to fall back on. So in the last 4 years, I consciously reduced my living costs a lot, so I can live from very little. So it's pandemia. I'm doing anything to make it stop, but if it doesn't, I'm not afraid.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think it's these young musicians who just went, freelance, or who just started their careers. They are quite affected in a way that they don't know where to go next, and so I think that is in that sense I can understand their sort of anguish about it.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah.
No, I completely agree and feel for them, because it is absolutely threatening and life threatening, because they were planning. If that would have happened to me with 25 years old, I would have pissed my pants. I had bought a cello with a debts of whatever 300,000 euros, so I needed to play to pay the debts. And when the German army wanted to pull me, I went to a psychiatrist and made sure I didn't even have to act. I was very convincing, and they said I was suicidable. So if I would have had to join the army, because I'm 69, so that was the first year of Berliners to be pulled to the German army, because Berliners before West Berliners didn't have to go to the German army because West Berlin had a special status. So when I was 20, the German army started knocking, and I had just bought a cello. So I said, I cannot not play. I have concerts, I have to play, I have to pay the debts. And if I cannot do that, I just kill myself. And the guy believed me and wrote a statement, Gerhardt is suicidable. And then the German army let me go.
Oh, okay.
Also, I had a letter from Azur who wrote something nice, but I think it was the psychiatrist proving that I would be prone to kill myself. And those kids now who maybe bought an instrument and suddenly didn't have any concerts. That is horrible. I mean, I'm curious how many suicides will be reported after that pandemic is over, with the lockdown in America. Not musicians, just anybody. Mortgages, that, especially America, where people live a lot with debts and credits, and it's all kind of calculated. They have the income, you pay your debts, and this shaky balance. If less income, suddenly you cannot pay your debts, and then you're on the street in no time. So this is disastrous. So I know I'm talking from a point of huge privilege and luck, and I don't complain. No, I don't judge anybody who was really afraid. I only judge the people who were lacking the recognition, because recognition we shouldn't. That's not really essential.
Yeah. No, I understand what you mean. But it was so lovely to talk to you, and as I say, so refreshing.
and I'll play in Vienna. I've completely, thanks to social media, I realized I have a concert in 3 weeks in Grafenegg.
Really? Oh, really?
So,
but if you have time, let's grab a coffee.
That would be lovely. We have the email, and then
you write to me. And
I don't have a schedule yet, but we'll do.
I would really like to meet you. That would be wonderful. Yeah. Okay.
Thanks, Petra.
Okay. Have a lovely afternoon.
Best.
Thank you. Bye.
I will go teaching now. Yes. Bye. Bye.
Bye.